10 signs your creativity is actually destroying your life. Let's just start here. Number 10, you can't finish anything because you're already in love with the next idea. You're halfway through a project, a good one, something that matters, and then it hits. A new idea, shinier, more exciting, and suddenly the thing you were working on feels stale, dead, like yesterday's news. So you abandon it. You tell yourself you'll come back to it, but you won't, because by tomorrow there'll be another idea, and another. I used to think this was passion. Turns out it's just avoidance, because starting things is intoxicating. It's all possibility, no consequences. But finishing means facing whether it's actually good, whether you're actually good. And that's terrifying. So your brain, clever thing that it is, offers you an escape route disguised as inspiration. I have a folder on my computer, 37 unfinished projects, novels that stop at chapter 3, paintings half done, songs with only verses, no chorus, and every single one of them felt like the one when I started. But the truth is, I wasn't creating, I was collecting beginnings, building a museum of almosts. And the worst part? You can't explain this to people. They see the new projects and think you're prolific, inspired. They don't see the graveyard behind you, the trail of abandoned things that haunt you at 3 a.m., whispering, "You could have finished me." Number 9, you've romanticized suffering so much that peace feels like failure. You tell yourself that real art comes from pain, that you need to be broken to make something beautiful. So when life gets stable, when things are actually good, you panic. Because if you're not suffering, what will you make? Who will you be? I did this for years. Chased chaos like it was fuel, stayed in relationships that hurt, picked fights that didn't need fighting, sabotaged good things because some part of me believed that comfort was the enemy of creativity, that if I wasn't bleeding, I wasn't real. And you know what I made during those years? A lot of dark, self-indulgent work that was more therapy than art. I thought I was being deep, raw, authentic, but I was just addicted to my own drama, using creativity as an excuse to avoid healing. Here's what took me too long to learn. Suffering doesn't make you a better artist. It just makes you suffer. The work doesn't need your pain. It needs your attention, your honesty, your willingness to show up even when it's boring, even when life is fine, even when there's nothing dramatic to process. But the addiction is real. Because pain is easy to write about. It's loud. It demands to be seen. Peace is quiet. And we've confused intensity with depth for so long that we don't know how to create from a place of wholeness. So we keep breaking ourselves open, wondering why we never heal. Number 8, you've used "I'm an artist" as an excuse for being a mess. Late to everything, flaking on plans, forgetting birthdays, not paying bills on time, living in chaos. And when someone calls you out, you shrug and say, "I'm creative, I'm not good with that stuff," like it's a personality trait instead of a choice. I've done this. God, I've done this so many times. Blamed my unreliability on my creative brain, made people feel uptight for expecting basic decency, acted like structure was oppression and organization was selling out, because if I admitted I could be responsible, I'd have to admit that all the mess was optional, that I was choosing it. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Discipline doesn't kill creativity. It protects it. Because when your life is chaos, when you're constantly putting out fires you started, you have no energy left for actual creation. You spend all your time managing disaster instead of making things. And the people around you, they get tired. They love you, but they're exhausted by your beautiful, tortured, inconsiderate bullshit. And eventually they leave. Not because they don't care, but because they can't keep being collateral damage in your artistic journey. You're not special because you're a mess. You're just a mess. And the sooner you realize that creativity and responsibility can coexist, the sooner you'll actually make something worth keeping. Number 7, every compliment feels like a lie because you know how much you faked it. Someone praises your work, calls it brilliant, authentic, raw, and instead of feeling good, you feel like a fraud because you know the truth. You know which parts you stole, which parts you exaggerated, which emotions you performed instead of felt. You know the gap between what they think you are and what you actually are. I've smiled through so many compliments while dying inside because I could see all the seams, all the places I cheated, the line I borrowed from someone better, the feeling I mimicked because I couldn't access it honestly. And the more people praised me, the more I felt like I was getting away with something. This is the curse of creative self-awareness. You see your own machinery too clearly. Every choice, every trick, every moment where you chose effect over truth, and you can't unhear it. So when someone says your work moved them, all you hear is, "I fooled you." But here's the paradox. That gap you feel, that distance between what you made and what you wanted to make, that's not proof you're a fraud. That's proof you're still reaching, still trying to make something truer than you know how to make. The frauds are the ones who think they've arrived. You're just someone who refuses to settle for what you can already do. Still, the compliments sting because you know they're loving the mask, not the face beneath it. Number 6. You've burned through friendships because you only call people when you need inspiration. They're not friends, they're fuel. You show up when you're stuck, when you need someone to mirror back your brilliance, when you want to talk about your ideas for 3 hours. But when they need you, when they're going through something and just want company, you're busy, working, in your head, creating. I lost someone this way once, someone who mattered. They told me, gently, that I only ever showed up to take, that our entire friendship was me using them as a sounding board, and I was offended, defensive, because I thought that's what artists did. We harvested life for material, and everyone should feel honored to be part of the process. But they were right. I wasn't their friend. I was a vampire, draining them for content, for energy, for validation, and when they had nothing left to give, I disappeared. Not consciously, not cruelly, just naturally, because I'd gotten what I needed. Creative people do this. We tell ourselves that our work is more important than regular life, that our art justifies our selfishness, but it doesn't. You're not creating a masterpiece, you're creating an excuse, a way to avoid the hard, boring, unglamorous work of actually caring about people. And the thing about using people, eventually they notice and they leave. And then you're alone with your art, wondering why it feels so hollow, wondering why success didn't fill the void. It's because you gutted your life to build your portfolio, and no amount of applause can replace the people who knew you before you became this.
Number 5. You've convinced yourself that productivity is the same as worthiness. You wake up and the first thought is, what will I make today? Not how do I feel? Not what do I need, but what will I produce? Because if you don't create something, you're wasting oxygen, taking up space, failing at the only thing you're supposed to be good at. I've had weeks where I made something every single day, pushed through exhaustion, through burnout, through complete creative emptiness, and I thought I was being disciplined, committed, but I wasn't. I was just terrified of being ordinary, terrified that if I stopped producing, I'd stop existing. Because somewhere along the way, I confused my output with my identity. I became what I made, and if I wasn't making anything, I was nothing, just a body taking up space, consuming resources, contributing nothing. And that fear, that bone-deep terror of being useless, drove me to create even when I had nothing to say. And you know what I made during those times? Garbage. Soulless, joyless, technically competent garbage. Because I was creating from fear, not from love, from obligation, not inspiration. I was checking a box, proving to some invisible judge that I deserved to exist. Here's the truth. You are not your output. Your worth doesn't come from how much you produce. You're allowed to rest, to do nothing, to exist without justifying that existence through constant creation. And the work you make after that rest, it'll be better because it'll come from fullness, not desperation. But I know that's hard to believe because we've built entire identities around being makers. And if we're not making, who are we? Maybe the answer is just human, and maybe that's enough. Number 4, you can't experience life without turning it into content. Something beautiful happens, a sunset, a conversation, a moment of genuine connection, and before you can even feel it, your brain is already narrating it, composing the Instagram caption, imagining how you'll paint it, drafting the scene in your head. You're not present, you're producing. I've cried at funerals while simultaneously writing the eulogy in my mind. I've been in bed with someone I loved, feeling their heartbeat, and thought about what chord progression would capture that rhythm. I've watched my own grandmother die, and my first instinct was to memorize the details, the light, the sounds, the way grief tastes. And I hate this about myself because I want to just be, to exist without the camera running, but I don't know how. My brain won't stop harvesting. Every moment is potential material. Every person is a character study. Every emotion is research. And people think this is dedication, but it's not. It's dissociation. I'm not living my life. I'm documenting it for later use. And the tragedy is that later, when I'm trying to create something authentic, I can't because I wasn't actually there. there. I was observing, taking notes, preparing to perform the emotion I never let myself feel. This is the loneliest part of being creative. You're never fully in the moment. There's always this part of you that's standing outside, watching, cataloging, preparing to extract value from every experience. You've turned your entire life into a mine, and you're the ore. And sometimes, late at night, you wonder what it would be like to just feel something without thinking about how you'll use it, to love someone without trying to capture it, to live without performing, but you don't know if you can, because you've been the observer for so long, you've forgotten how to be the participant. Number 3, you've mistaken isolation for dedication. You cancel plans, skip events, avoid people, and you tell yourself it's because you need to create, you need solitude, you need silence. And maybe that's partly true, but mostly you're just hiding, using your art as a socially acceptable excuse to avoid the messy, complicated, vulnerable business of being around humans. I spent 2 years like this once, alone in my apartment, convinced I was doing the work, making sacrifices for my craft. And I was productive. I made a lot of things, but they were all hollow, technically good, emotionally empty, because I'd cut myself off from the very thing that makes art matter. Connection. You can't make art about being human if you're not participating in humanity. You can't write about loneliness from a place of isolation. It just becomes echo chamber poetry. You can't capture truth if you're only talking to yourself. But we convince ourselves otherwise. We wear our solitude like a badge, proof of our commitment, our seriousness. But here's what I learned. Isolation isn't dedication. It's fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of being ordinary when you're around others. Fear that if you're not special, you're nothing. So you retreat. You create a world where you're always the protagonist, always the genius, always misunderstood. And it feels safe, but it's also slowly killing you. Because art isn't made in a vacuum. It's made in the friction between your inner world and the outer one. And when you remove that friction, you remove the spark. You become technically proficient at expressing nothing. And all that time you thought you were protecting your creativity, you were actually starving it. Number 2, you've weaponized your sensitivity. Someone criticizes your work, gently, constructively, and you fall apart. Not because the feedback is wrong, but because it touches the thing you're most afraid of, that you're not as good as you think you are. So you lash out, or you spiral, or you quit, because you've convinced yourself that your sensitivity is what makes you creative, and therefore any attempt to protect yourself from criticism would be betraying your art. And I've done this. I've cried over feedback that was absolutely correct. I've cut people out of my life for pointing out flaws I already knew existed. I've burned opportunities because I couldn't handle the ego bruise of revision. And every time I told myself I was protecting my vision, staying true to my voice. But I wasn't. I was just being fragile. Because here's the thing, sensitivity is useful. It's what allows you to notice things others miss, to feel deeply, to create with nuance. But weaponized sensitivity is just manipulation. It's using your feelings as a shield against growth. It's making other people responsible for managing your ego. It's turning every critique into an existential crisis so that eventually people stop being honest with you. And then you're surrounded by yes men, people who praise everything because they're afraid of breaking you. And your work stops evolving because you've made it impossible to receive the very feedback that would make you better. The hardest lesson I've learned is this. You can be sensitive and strong at the same time. You can feel the sting of criticism and still listen to it. You can be hurt and still grow. Your sensitivity doesn't have to be a liability, but it is as long as you keep using it as an excuse to avoid the discomfort of improving. Number 1, you've realized you're afraid of actually succeeding. You've been working toward this for years. Recognition, success, the moment when your work finally matters to more than just you. And now that it's close, now that it might actually happen, you're terrified, not of failure, of success. Because if you succeed, you'll have to face the truth that it might not fix you, that acclaim doesn't fill the void, that being seen doesn't mean being understood. And then what? Then you've got nothing left to chase, no excuse for why you're still unhappy, no when I make it fantasy to sustain you. And I've sabotaged myself at this exact moment more times than I can count. Right when things were about to take off, I'd implode. Start a fight, miss a deadline, burn a bridge. Not consciously, but some part of me knew if I succeeded, I'd have to face all the things success was supposed to solve. The loneliness, the feeling of fraudulence, the fear that even at my best, I'm still not enough. And there's something else too. Success means visibility. It means people will actually see your work, judge it, compare it. And as long as you're struggling, you can tell yourself you're misunderstood, underappreciated, too ahead of your time. But if you succeed and you're still not satisfied, then you have to admit that the problem was never external. Maybe it was you all along. So, if you've been reading this and seeing yourself, if you've been nodding along to every sign, recognizing the patterns you thought were just yours, I want you to know something. Your creativity isn't the problem. The problem is that you've turned it into your entire identity, your worth, your excuse, your escape, and it was never meant to carry all that weight. That's it. I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe for insights like this.